Okay, picture this. You're living in a world with no clear rules at all. Justice, it's pretty much whatever the strongest guy around says it is. And in a world like that, a really simple crime, say stealing a loaf of bread,
Well, that has a consequence that's swift, it's brutal, and it is absolutely permanent. No, you're not going to jail, you're not paying a fine, you lose your hand. Just like that.
and here's the wild part. For millions of people, almost 4,000 years ago, this wasn't some horrific act of cruelty. Nope. This was fair. This was justice. So let's get right into it. Today, we're going to break down one of the most important and, let's be honest, one of the most brutal legal systems ever created. We're talking about the Code of Hammurabi, a set of laws that literally terrified a whole civilization into falling in line. All right, so to really get why a code this harsh was even a thing, we got to go back and look at the world before it existed. And honestly, it was just chaos, pure and simple. I mean, think about it. If you were one of the powerful folks, you could do whatever you wanted, take whatever you wanted, hurt whoever you wanted, and there were zero consequences. But if you were weak, you just lived in constant fear. You had absolutely nobody to protect you. The only rule was might makes right. And then, right into the middle of all this chaos, steps a king. And he asks this really dangerous question. What if? What if fear was the only way to create order? What if the price you had to pay for peace was pain? I mean, that was the radical idea at the very heart of his whole plan. But here's the thing about Hammurabi. He wasn't just some guy who wrote down laws. Oh no. Before he could write the rule book for an entire empire, he first had to build that empire. And let me tell you, he did it with a ton of patience, some brilliant strategy, and just utter ruthlessness. Yeah, this guy didn't start at the top of the food chain. Not even close. He was the ruler of Babylon, which at the time was just this small, kind of vulnerable city. And it was surrounded by way bigger, way more powerful enemies, all of them basically just waiting for their chance to stomp him out. So what's his game plan? Well, first, he plays the long game. He just waits. For years, he focuses on his own city, building up food supplies, getting his resources in order. Then, phase two, he makes friends. He teams up with his rivals to take down other, bigger threats. But, and this is classic Hammurabi, once those allies weren't useful anymore, he turns on them, betrays them, attacks when they're not expecting it. And just like that, one by one, the other kingdoms fall, until only Babylon is left standing, in control of everything. And now that he has total control, Hammurabi unleashes his greatest weapon. And it's not an army, it's an idea. It's a system of laws that was going to change history forever. He had his laws carved into this massive stone pillar, it's called a stele, and he puts it right in the middle of the city for everyone to see. Now, you gotta understand, just that act alone was revolutionary. This wasn't some secret list of rules for the rich and powerful. This was the law, right out in the open for every single person. And we're talking about 282 laws. 282, covering literally everything you can think of. Property, business deals, family stuff, violent crimes, you name it. It was a complete system designed to control every single part of life in his new empire. So let's break down the thinking behind all this, because it's actually pretty brilliant in a terrifying way. First, all the punishments were public. The whole point wasn't just to punish one person, it was to scare everyone else straight. Second, the pain was predictable. You knew exactly what would happen to you if you broke a law. No surprises. Third, because it was carved in stone, justice was permanent. It couldn't be changed on a whim by some new king. And finally, and this is a big one, no excuses, no mercy. The law was the law, period. Okay, so the system was incredibly harsh, right? But it had this one core idea that was, for its time, just mind-blowingly revolutionary. Let's take a look. It's this concept called lex talionis. It's a fancy Latin term for the law of retaliation. You've definitely heard the saying, an eye for an eye, right? Well, this is where that comes from. The punishment was designed to perfectly match the crime. You poke out a guy's eye, they poke out yours. You break someone's bone, well, your bone gets broken right back. It's simple, it's direct, and man, is it brutal. But here's the real kicker, the most radical part of this whole thing. At the very top of that stone, there's a picture of Hammurabi getting the laws directly from a god. And the message there is crystal clear. Even the king isn't above the law. Now that is a huge deal. But, and it's a big but, justice for all didn't mean equal justice. The punishments were way different depending on your social class. Hurting a nobleman would cost you a lot more than hurting a commoner or a slave. So while the law applied to everyone, the consequences definitely did not. Still, for the first time ever, there was this idea that justice was a permanent thing, something that, at least in theory, even the king had to answer to.
And all of this brings us to the big question, the one that historians still argue about today. How are we supposed to look back on this guy and what he created?
So what's the verdict? Was Hammurabi some kind of visionary who brought order out of total chaos? A genius who knew that society needed rules to survive? Or was he just a tyrant who figured out that fear was the best way to control millions of people?
Let's look at the arguments. In the visionary column, he created stability where there was none. He established the rule of law, and he gave the weak some kind of protection they never had before. But then you look at the tyrant column, his entire system ran on fear, the punishments were just gruesome, and let's not forget his whole empire was built on backstabbing his allies. You can definitely make a strong case for either side.
And that right there is the dilemma. So I'm going to ask you, just for a second, forget about our modern world. Imagine you're living back then, in that violent, messy, unpredictable time. Would you want to live under his laws? Is that kind of safety worth that kind of fear? It's a tough one, right? No easy answer. Because you have to remember, this was way before our ideas of modern courts, or human rights, or even trying to rehabilitate people. Long before all of that, there was the code, there was the stone, and there was the man who was absolutely convinced that the only way to build a civilization was to terrify it into obedience.